All right, we're back. We got the Euro versus the Canadian, guys. I've just pulled the trigger on a new short position, bearish position. And I knew that it was just a matter of time. I was ready. I was watching very closely on the escalating situation here on the Euro Canadian. I want to present to you the case of my bearish conviction here. It mostly relies on two technical elements which I regard as extremely important. The first is the fact that price, when it was on the upside, and I'm talking about the last upside move, right? I'm talking about this move. Now this move happened to reach exactly, right, precisely the 61.8 Fibonacci projection, most famous and most important correction key level, right? The 61.8. When you measure the whole downside move, which I consider to be just the first downside segment in what seems to be a long-term downside trend, right? So we had the first downside segment followed by a technical upside correction. And I say this with some level of confidence because price had reacted in a beautiful fashion here on that 61.8 and completely collapsed, right? So I figured that we're looking at the next downside segment, which can, potentially speaking, can lead price all the way to this level. Take a look at this key level, 43.96. That's also a symmetric key level coming from the big picture, the big setup. I'm talking about that blue setup. So we have this kind of natural, Fibonacci correction analytics pointing out for the potential next downside move that I was just describing. That was just the first element. Let me throw in the second element here, which I think is equally important, if not more important maybe. So right now I'm talking about that mid-low key level in the lower scale system, right? The black system. In that black system, we're looking at this trading range. Well, we have already 3 legs, right? Basically, we have 4 legs. We've just landed in the lower section here. But here's what I find to be remarkably interesting. We have this mid-low key level 50.70, which was supposed to be a support, which it was up until a few weeks ago. Take a look. When price first engaged here on that 50.70, you can see the close. It was 50.71 with a bit of a spike there. Price was beginning to challenge, right, that key level. It failed. Later on, right, the next week, take a look what happened here. You know what? Let me close up. Take a look at this move here. Take a look at the close, guys. The close, 50.75, another failure. Right, so price was trying to break 50.70, failed again. But what happened the following week was just a very decisive break. So price crashed that level, but not before. It was actually challenging from below, right? It made it all the way. Take a look at that highest high here. It made it to 51.88 during that week, but ended up, as you can see, deep below that 50.70. So that was the first time price was officially breaking the 50.70. And also last week we saw another attempt to break back above, fail, right? Take a look at that spike here. And today, right, this week, we see price begin to move away, right? To break away from that key level. That, I think that's important when it comes to the bigger picture. So I decided to pull the trigger. I'm starting small here. As price continues to move downwards, I begin to increase the position, but there is an obstacle that I think is most important to take notice of, the 47.55. That's the bottom key level here. Important support. We need this level to cave and for price to keep pushing downwards in order to reach our final destination, which is 43.96 according to the big picture coming from the monthly chart, by the way. Really interesting stuff. Just such a wide trading range you see here that's started to develop around 2015, believe it or not. And right now, if you look at the bigger picture, we came from the very edge, right, of that setup, that blue setup, and price is making its way towards the lower section here, and that's obviously the kind of the major trend when it comes to the bigger picture. Anyway, this is pretty much a situation. Pull the trigger, stop loss level 51.50. That's my initial placement. Price could go on the upside in the next day or two, just as a form of a local upside correction. But in general, we're expecting the continuation of the downside movement. I'll come back to follow up on this one as usual and keep you posted. In the meantime, guys, I'll say goodbye and we'll see you tomorrow.